I've shot a lot of bucks right off the edge of the thicket. It seemed like those bucks do a little bit different. You can get back in that thicket, and I'd put Jordan on a pretty oak ridge, and I'd go back in a laurel or ivy thicket or something, and that's where I'd shoot the buck, you know.
Yeah.
I'd get on.
He knew that was going to happen. He's going to cut me off. He didn't care. He's like, no, I'm shooting the deer, not you.
The bucks, sometimes they don't like to walk these wide open places sometimes, you know, it's according to how much you're pressured, but I've shot a lot of deer just right almost in those thickets, you know. They're going to come to food, but sometimes I think acorns are just kind of temporary in a way. It's more big bucks are killed checking for does, checking scrapes, coming out of thickets, you know, that back route instead of that pretty oak ridge or something.
Daryl and Jordan Jones.
What's up?
Appreciate y'all doing this. Appreciate you, Jordan, for setting this up. And Daryl, I really appreciate you saying yes to doing this.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, it's gonna be. Is this the first podcast you've ever?
Yeah, I've never done one.
Really? You haven't had him on yet?
No.
You won't do mine. Mine's a little bit different than y'all's. It's mine's uncensored. It's a little bit. Yeah. It's not made for something that.
If you listen to it with the kids in the car, they might learn some words.
Yeah. We don't want to do that. You know, we just keep it to PG on your podcast, and that's the best one for him. I wouldn't even go into the room, but whenever there was two people kissing on TV around him, so it made me feel awkward. So I was like, I'm not going to do that. So
well, Daryl, I of course knew of you from Jordan, your son. This is another father-son duo that we're always excited when we get opportunities to do episodes like that because Jordan's been on the podcast, popular guest of ours we had on last year. Mm-hmm. And actually, he's our most viral TikTok video we've ever put out. Mm-hmm. Talking about listening for blue jays, finding feed trees early season, which we might talk about that at some point in this episode. But Jordan, I think I've known you for 7 years, maybe from the Run and Gun Whitetail Hunters Facebook group that we run.
Uh-huh.
And I remember back in the day, it's only 7 years ago, but you had made some posts and you took photos from this basement. Uh-huh. And it was of the Windwalker lock-on stands and this whole wall of just racks. Come to find out these are the small deer. Now the big bucks are upstairs, which we'll cut that in at some point of the video. And you were talking about your dad, and we were just getting the podcast started, had the podcast going for a little while. I'm like, dude, we got to figure out how to get Jordan's dad on the podcast. And it's taken us 8 years to finally make it happen.
Yeah.
So, so we're super excited to talk to you guys about everything. But to kind of get us started, Jordan, of course, we've had you on the podcast. I'll get to you in a second. But Daryl, I want to start with you.
Okay.
What is your background bow hunting? How did you get into it, and what has that journey been like for you?
My dad was a big bow hunter. He loved bow hunting, and he got me started. He bought me a bow when I was 7 years old, a recurve, and I started shooting it. And finally, we didn't have many deer when I was that young, you know. We really didn't get many deer till I was 10 to 15 years old before we started getting deer in this area. And so it was my dad that started me, and I shot that bow all the time. I had an Pro Hoyt bow Ben Pearson bow. It was a Ben Pearson bow. And that's what I got my first deer with. And I got it's a little 4-pointer back there. And I was around 13 to 14 years old. And I got it behind my house just a few miles up the road here. Yeah, but that got me hooked when I shot that one deer, you know. And then I started shooting at groundhogs and everything else I could shoot at with a bow. But that's how I kind of got started, you know. But my dad, he kept me in the woods all the time. You know, that was the main reason I was doing my hunting, because of him.
So how long has your family been in North Carolina, Daryl?
We've lived here kind of in this area all of our lives. That's all the way back to my great-grandfathers pretty much has been in this area right here, you know, this mountain region within a 30-mile radius probably. Not very far from here. So I grew up in this area.
And Jordan, this gives us a lot of clarification on how you got into bow hunting. I can see.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Daryl, you're talking about your father got you into bow hunting. That's interesting to hear because we don't hear that very often. Because I don't know how old you are. I do want to ask you how old.
I'll be 70 in November.
Okay, awesome. And you're still getting after it.
Still at it. Still climbing the trees. Still shooting that bow.
Even after a knee replacement.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm already hung some stands already.
But it's interesting that, again, y'all's family heritage of bow hunting goes back that far because we don't see that very often.
Yeah.
Especially in the deep south, just because the lack of deer down here for most of the southeast. It didn't seem like there was many deer in a lot of the southeast until really starting getting in the 70s.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
what was your dad a deer hunter back then?
Yeah. We small game hunted a lot because we didn't have a lot of deer. When I first started, our bow season was 1 week long, and it was buck only, and you had to shoot recurves. And so when I was about 16 is when we got like 4 weeks of bow season. We started getting more deer, and actually the wildlife did a great job transporting and transferring deer into some of our mountain region, and they took off and did good. So our seasons got longer, and the buck limits went up, but that's kind of how it was, But my dad was a big hunter. He's what got me started.
So back then, was your dad deer hunting back then too, or was he also fresh?
Yeah, he was kind of about the same time. He had shot, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 deer when I was around 10 years old. He'd shot a few deer with a recurve, and he'd killed a few with a gun. But pretty much, I don't know. We did a lot of grouse and rabbit hunting because the deer season wasn't long. So but yeah, he really got me started the deer hunting, and that's how I got Jordan started. About the same way. But Jordan started when he was about 3.
Yeah, I can see it now because I got a 6 and a 3-year-old now, and I can't walk out the door without them wanting to chase me down. And Daddy, like if I put on a camo hat, my 3-year-old's like, "Are you going hunting?" And I'm like, "No, buddy, I just decided to wear it."
Yeah.
And then I know that I was the same way with him. Like I remember the first time I killed a turkey, I believe it was that I stayed up all night and didn't go to bed, and I had my camo on, and I was 8 years old. And Dad had taken me hunting, and I'd killed my first deer, I think, at that point. But
if I went out the door with camouflage on, he would fall in the floor and cry. He wanted to go with me. I took him a lot, and I actually set him a lot with me when he was 3 to 5 years old. I shot a few deer with him before he actually got a deer, but anyway, he started getting them young. I know that.
But you have to we'll show him the photo album. There's a photo album up there where I went hunting with him. He knows what I'm talking about. But there's a picture of him holding an 8-pointer, a little 8-pointer, and then right under it's like a Post-it note with check marks on it. And I'd sat with him hunting, and I counted every time we saw a deer, and I put a check mark on it. I think there was like 13 check marks on it, but we really only saw 3 or 4 deer. It was just one would go behind a tree and then leave. But he killed an 8-pointer with me that day, and I was 7. I remember it like it was yesterday. That was fun. That was real fun. Like I remember that.
I gotta ask, what was it like having like 4-year-old Jordan in the blind? Like, how do you keep him contained and quiet?
I will say that he was pretty quiet. He was so interested in it that he was pretty good to stay still.
Josh wasn't.
I had his older brother was just the opposite. He liked to walk, and he was active, and he didn't want to sit long, And I had him hunting too, but I had to take him walking with a gun and stalking, still hunting or whatever, more so. But Jordan was, I have to say, he was real good to sit, and he was climbing a tree, hunting with a bow pretty early.
Born a killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's pictures shooting where I shot Tweety birds when I was 3 years old. There's one up there I killed. I like shooting stuff.
Yeah.
I told you I don't like it when animals breathe around me.
He had the instinct to hunt early. I set him in a tree. I don't know, when he was probably 7 or 8 years old, I'd say.
Yeah.
And he got his first. You might have to correct me. First deer with a bow about.
I was 9. No, I was 10. I was
about 10 years old.
I stalked it. We stalked it.
Yeah. And then
The The second deer with a bow, I stalked too.
Got your first turkey when you was about 7.
I was 8.
8.
I was 8 when I
Somewhere
killed
around
my
that.
first deer. I killed
Yeah.
a buttonhead. I was 8 when I killed my first turkey. And then you've got, first deer with a bow was I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was the first doe I killed, actually.
But he shot a lot of deer. By the time he was 10 or 12 years old, he had already shot them with a bow and a gun, and and we hunted mostly natural. He didn't kill any deer over bait at all. We would hunt the red oaks and apple trees, and we would hang the stands, and I would go up a tree right behind him, and follow him up a tree, make sure he wouldn't fall, and I'd set 2 stands with him, and we did that a lot, and he shot a lot of deer. I know that.
I'd get
He
so
missed a
mad
lot.
at him.
He missed a lot of deer too, though.
Well, if I saw a warm body, I was slinging an arrow
Yeah.
at it, but I'd get so mad at him because whenever we started, I was like 12 or 13 years old. He's like, all right, Jordan, you're big enough where I'm going to split up from you. And I'm going, no, Dad, because you might shoot the deer that I want to shoot, And I was like, I don't want that to happen. Well, that happened quite a bit.
That did happen a few times.
There's actually, trying to think, there's a couple of deer like just right here around that I can show you where he literally just would go 75, 100 yards up the hill, and the 8-pointer that I wanted to shoot he'd kill it before it got to me. And so
one of them fell against the tree.
it fell. It ran into the tree I was sitting in and died right there under it. So I mean, it's 100-inch 8-pointer, but when you're 13 years old, you get mad at your dad for shooting the deer that I was like, Dad, you've killed 200 of these size. Let me shoot one. I'd never killed a. I think that was at this is bad. We got a place called the 6-pointer place. I said that was at the 6-pointer place. I remember that, and he'd shoot the heck out of them. So I'd take after him. I try to at least.
And you talking about him killing 200. You're not over exaggerating. There is just downstairs. I can't. You couldn't even count them all. There are so many buck racks hanging up on this. Not even on a rafter, just on beams going across this. This basement, and this basement's probably 60 foot, 70 foot long, and there's
21 yards exactly.
21 yards of 4 rows of racks. I mean, it's insane the amount of deer that are down here. And again, these are just like the ones that didn't make it upstairs. So,
Yeah. And a lot of these deer were upstairs.
Okay.
And then they got brought down here after they got,
demoted.
Yeah.
I had a lot of those mounted, and I took them off the form. I took a bunch off the form, make more room, I guess.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I told him, I said, man, something happens to you, I'm screwed. I don't know what to do with the deer horns. There's a whole bunch. I mean, people don't talk about that. They don't think about that.
No, but about 1,000 knife handles or more down here.
Yeah, I couldn't do that. That's the problem is I don't think I couldn't do it. I couldn't sell it to somebody I'd want them to be, what I thought about, like a big old huge building or something like that, just put them in there just to leave them for their family,
Yeah. Daryl, how many bucks do you think you've shot with a bow over the years, if you had to guess?
I don't know. I'm going to say,
Well over 300.
yeah, over 300, I'd say.
It's probably, I'm going to say probably pushing 400.
Yeah, I'd get, now some of these come from different states, I'd get 3 or 4 sets of license, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia.
You used to kill 4 bucks in North Carolina.
Yeah, you could get 4. So I'd shoot my limit here, and one time we could shoot 5 in South Carolina, and Virginia it was 2 to 3. One time it was 3, I think, in Virginia. But anyway, I hunted a lot of states. I'd get my limit, and we like to eat them. That's why I shot a lot of them. I mean, we didn't waste one of them. We'd always eat them.
That's why I'm fat.
I filled Jordan full of deer meat when he was little.
Lord, we didn't even, we never really ate out much. That's all we ate, really.
We ate a lot of wild game. I know that. I still love to eat it. That's still like, but I'm a lot more particular now. I like shooting the bigger ones now.
So how did you, when you first got into bow hunting and just deer hunting in general, deer were kind of starting to come on the scene here where you could hunt them more. Was it, the early years for you, was it just trial and error? How did you start to learn how to find deer and start killing deer consistently?
Yeah, that not being a lot of deer helped me a lot up in this mountain region, trying to find the deer. There wasn't a lot of deer, and you had to really struggle to get out there to really work for it. I can remember go a whole week and not see 5 deer hardly, but I just have to hunt off of a trail or something, or out of a thicket or just something. Our mountain region is, I think, one of the toughest regions to hunt. I've hunted a lot of states, and we got a lot of woods and a lot of forest up here, and it's tough, to get right on, especially with a bow. But I think being not a lot of deer in our area helped me be a better hunter, to find deer and stuff. But a lot of our mountain section up here, it's probably the red oaks are the best thing up here in this section to shoot deer over, especially with the bow. They fall in September and October.
And white oaks too.
And white oaks, the only thing about our white oaks, they don't seem to make it here as good. Like the frost may get them in the spring or something. They don't produce as good up in our mountain region. The red oaks seem to be better, but the white oaks is the number one thing here as far as the nuts, if you can find the ones that produce, And but apple trees here is real good in our mountain section up here. They fall early, about in August, September, and so if you can find those apple trees, we got a lot of wild apple trees in our mountain section. But what gets really tough is you get in this high elevation, you don't have as many red oaks or anything. You just have a lot of scrub trees, and that's where it gets really tough to find the deer. You just have to go by the buck sign or the trails. Our trails here, deer trails, are real distinct around these side of these mountains, coming out of these big laurel thickets and stuff. And you just have to find their passageway. And it seems like if you hunt 5 areas, you're going to hunt it 5 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things in our mountains too is the wind is real tough. The wind circulates and currents are different, and it may call for a west wind. You go to your stand, it's blowing east, and that makes it tough. So I've spent a lot of years just putting up a hang on with tree steps before daylight. I used to just walk up and say, "Oh, it's blowing that way. I better go on the left side." So anyway, that's a lot of what I've done.
Yeah, we experienced a lot of that when we hunted out here last year.
Yeah.
Rough terrain. We've hunted Wyoming a couple times, western Wyoming, and aside from the lack of oxygen out there, if we're just talking the terrain, some of the country over here that we walked in was a lot worse than what we had in Wyoming.
Steep, some places, isn't it?
It's steep, and the dirt is like, I don't even know how it's on the hill. It's so steep, and there's like nothing. It's so soft.
Soft, isn't it?
Yeah, you slip, and you go for a ride if you're not careful.
I fell about 50,000 times, I think, on the side of those hills.
That leaf litter gets so thick is the problem. You come up here late season.
Yeah.
That leaf litter is so thick you can't see the rocks that are under it because we have very rocky terrain. I mean, you know that. You got to experience it firsthand. And you get that really steep where you can stand straight up and touch the ground and it's nothing but rocks, and then you got a foot of leaf litter under it. You better have a good set of boots on, otherwise you're going sliding. And I don't know, what's that guy that you had on? I think it was right before my episode launched last year, or you had just recorded. He wears baseball cleats.
Yeah, Stuart Keene.
Yeah, Stuart Keene.
Yeah, that's honestly, like, there's no way I could do that because my feet would hurt too bad, but that's a great idea to do it. I mean, just to hold the grip, just to go to these mountains and stuff, and then the trekking pole stuff. But I'm not carrying all that stuff in, but yeah, I get that.
Yeah, it was rough last year. So you mentioned that there was a low deer density back then, and you're kind of thankful for that because it taught you how to be a really good hunter. Is there I'm guessing the deer density is better these days than it was back then?
Yes, it's quadrupled or even more. I mean, we really got a lot of deer all in our areas now. And we can shoot. How many does is it, Jordan?
You can kill 4 does and 2 bucks. Now it used to be it was unlimited.
Used to get unlimited tags, but anyway, our population's really picked up, and there used to be no deer in this area. Now they're all around, so it's really changed, and we're getting better bucks too. I think people are really looking more toward cameras and being more selective and stuff, and I think our bucks are getting bigger. It was unusual in our area to kill 120-inch deer at one time, And but we're getting better deer now, aren't we?
Yeah. When I talked to Jordan yesterday, we were talking about you, and he's like, "Well, my dad's really known for if there's a buck around, he'll find it." So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about your method that you've developed over the years, and the reason a lot of people find this interesting is because this was us last year. When you come up anywhere in the Appalachian Mountains, really anywhere in a big wood setting, but especially around here, you just look across that mountain range and it's so vast and so rugged. There's so much area. You're like, where do I even start? Like, how do I go out here and even start to find deer? So I want to get into that a little bit. Just what did you develop over the years that lets you go out and locate deer in the mountains?
Well, sometimes I can just listen for like squirrels or birds, crows, blue jays, like Jordan said one time. And that'll tell you where a lot of times the best food is, But that don't always work. A lot of times you just have to find on those trails or something, It's I'll do a lot of walking. That's something I've done a lot of, walking and just sitting. And it's tough, like you said, in the mountain region, but sometimes I can just hear the wildlife, and listen and help some. But I'll find a trail, and just follow those trails and see. There's got to be going to the bedding area or the food somehow, and keep on until you find that buck sign, those rubs, or it's according to what time of year it is, to what you do. And it's hard, to me, it's just adapting to the place or the situation. It's not always the same. If I hunt 10 places, sometimes I'll do 5 or 6 different things, But it's being able to adapt to that situation, There may be a big, huge laurel thicket there, and you find where they're coming out or going back in, or a big cutover. There's a lot of variations there. It's just being able to see, and most of the time I'm wrong. That's the way deer hunt. It seems like we're wrong about 90% of the time, but anyway, just being able to read what's going on has been the biggest thing for me, And but sometimes it works, sometimes it don't.
Yeah, I was wondering about the trails. We talk with a lot of guys about trails in this part of the country. And one thing that you'll find out here that we found last year was you'll be going up the side of the mountain and you'll hit a trail. And then you'll go up 100 feet, 50 feet, you'll find another trail. And you go up and, you find they're almost like topo lines going up the mountains where these deer over the years have just carved in a trail on the side of that mountain face. What do you use as a determining factor to know which trail you ought to be on?
Yeah, that's tough. Sometimes they'll make a rub line along those trails, You might see where a buck's using that trail, and you may sometimes see the direction, where it's going by the way he's rubbing the trees. But it's usually the best one, the widest one, the deepest one that, that you see is the one that you want to follow or check it out. And sometimes it may be 6 or 8 does doing that, but you just have to get in there. And when it gets toward the pre-rut, that's a really good time. When you follow those trails and you start seeing some scrapes along top of a ridge somewhere, that means a lot right there. If you can follow that into some buck sign, it can change a whole lot. You can be on the does or the bucks, and sometimes it's hard to determine, It's tough, and sometimes it's just trial and error,
Well, I was telling them, remember the secondary trails that you used to show me, like where you've got a main trail, but then 30 to 40 yards off to the side, it might be going to the same spot, but it's a secondary. It doesn't look like, but maybe a deer or two's been down it. That's usually where the bucks are using.
He's right, yeah.
That's just because they scent check that main trail. And that's the biggest thing up in these mountains, because they're so big and so vast. Wind for a deer, I'm not saying for you to hunt them, for a deer is huge for them, because they've got to move constantly to try to figure out how they're going to be downwind to wherever they're going. And I think a lot of times people miss, like, I mean, whether you're in the Midwest or here, it doesn't matter. It translates all. Big bucks will try to be downwind of everything, anywhere they're going. Sometimes, most of the time. So, because I have seen big bucks come with the wind at their back because they can see where they're going, they can smell behind them. But I mean, most of the time it's that downwind, and then you get that trail that's 30 to 40 yards off, and that's what I focus on. And I know him because you're the one that taught me that. I'll never forget how because I missed a real big 8-pointer. It's just long shot, stupid, and shouldn't have took it. I was young. I said, there's sitting on 2 main trails coming down by, and I said, Dad, he came off the bank right there. And he said, well, yeah, look at the difference between here and there. He said, there's just a couple of deer coming down there. And he said, there's a couple horned trees coming down that little trail. He said, but you got these 2 main. He said, that deer came down there just to check. And you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to say the place y'all won't know, but I'll tell him that the place that we're talking about. It's where I killed my first deer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a long time ago.
I've shot a lot of bucks right off the edge of the thicket. It seemed like those bucks do a little bit different. You can get back in that thicket, and I'd put Jordan on a pretty oak ridge, and I'd go back in a laurel or ivy thicket or something, and that's where I'd shoot the buck,
Yeah.
I'd get on.
He knew that was going to happen. He's going to cut me off. He didn't care. He's like, no, I'm shooting the deer, not you.
The bucks, sometimes they don't like to walk these wide open places sometimes, it's according to how much you're pressured, but I've shot a lot of deer just right almost in those thickets,
Something every deer hunter gets excited about is when a cold front's pushing through. And one thing that Onyx Hunt just released that I'm really excited about is their new weather feature built into the app. What it allows you to do is be able to scroll throughout all your pins, whether it's in the same state, same county, or across the country, and get accurate weather data directly from that pin location with the closest weather station. This eliminates the need for multiple apps. Also, it has barometric pressure, but one other thing is it has accurate moon data. So for the guys that like hunting moon phase, moon positioning, all that kind of stuff, it shows all that in the app as well. So all you moon phase guys, moon positioning guys, we got you covered. So now Onyx Hunt is your one-stop shop for whitetail hunting, getting all the accurate information that you need, whether it's mapping, weather, looking at trail camera data, and so on. It's a one-stop shop for you. So if you want to try Onyx Hunt this fall, you can use the code SOUTHERN to save on your membership. Know where you stand with Onyx Hunt.
So when it comes to packing your gear into the woods, there's really one thing that matters the most to me, and that is being able to have everything very secure and within the footprint of your torso, essentially, which means that I don't want anything sticking out from either side. I don't want anything sticking up above my back. You just want to keep everything really tight, close to the body, so you're not snagging on things when you're walking through the woods. To do that, it's important to have a backpack that has a lot of options for how you can attach things to the pack. This is the Ranger 22 and Ranger 33 from Latitude, 2 of our favorite packs. And the reason I like these packs is because they've got 2 straps that go across the body of the pack. They've got this panel that goes over those straps, and then you also have straps on the bottom of the backpack as well. What that allows me to do is I can attach my sticks and my platform in a variety of different ways that keeps everything very secure and kind of covered up. Like you can see, I've got my platform right here covered with this panel. Again, that keeps it very tight, and it keeps it close to my body where nothing's hanging out and snagging on briars or vines or anything as I'm trying to make my way to the stand, which keeps me quiet and keeps me from getting aggravated when I'm walking through the woods. So I personally like the Ranger 22 a lot. The Ranger 33 is a slightly bigger pack. It's a really good option, especially as you get into later season. If you want a little bit more room, it's going to make it easier to carry things like bibs or any extra layers that you're going to need for cold weather. So you can check both of these out at latitudeoutdoors.com.
Everybody needs a great pair of binos, and if you're looking to get you a better pair of binos this fall, check out the Viper HD 10x42s from Vortex Optics. These are quickly becoming one of my favorite pair of binos because they're lightweight, they're fairly compact, and they have great glass for the price point. So if you're looking for premium glass without the premium price, check out the Viper HDs from vortexoptics.com. And if you want to purchase, you can go over to eurooptic.com and use the code SOUTHERN10. Again, it's SOUTHERN10 at eurooptic.com to save you 10% on anything from Vortex. Over the years, we've interviewed quite a few successful ground hunters when it comes to bow hunting, and the commonalities between all of them is using the shadows to their advantage. Having overhead cover, back cover, and a little bit of front cover that adds a little bit more shadows to their setup, which allows them to hide a lot easier. That's what we've done today and built this brush blind for Andrew to come in here with his recurve and shoot some does, hopefully early season when these white oaks behind the camera are going to be dropping. One important thing about blending in the shadows is having something that works camo-wise in the shadows, and that's one thing I like about this Mossy Oak Woodsman Leaf Jacket. is it's a little bit darker in color, and to me blends in a little bit better to the shadows during early season when you have full leaves on those trees. This is something I'm going to keep in my backpack all season because it's really compact, it's really lightweight, and breathes really well. And I really won't need it until I need it, but it's going to be in my backpack the whole time, which is really nice because of how compact it is. So if you're interested in ground hunting a little bit this year or having extra concealment up in the tree, check out the Mossy Oak Woodsman Leaf Jacket at mossyoak.com. And are you pinpointing, like in that circumstance, you know, kind of Garhole and Jordan sticking him up on that oak ridge and you get in the thicket, are you just in the moment kind of analyzing how the trails look and you're sitting up on the trail you think you have the best opportunity on in or next to that thicket and you're climbing there?
Yeah, that's the way I like to do sometimes. Sometimes I like to push as far as I can into the bedding, almost into the bedding area, as long as you're safe enough to not jump them out of there, you know. I've shot a lot of deer just pushing as far as I could, just taking a chance, you know. I've been one to always take the biggest chance I can take closest to that deer where I can see that buck in the daylight, you know. Because a lot of times he's bedding in that thicket and he's going all the way to that food. He's going all the way to that food and he's not getting to that food till after dark or something. And I say, I'm not seeing that buck. And then I just push a little more, you know, and that's how I've shot a lot of bucks, I've scared off a lot of bucks too. But anyway, I'm not afraid to just take a big chance. I think that's the biggest thing I'm saying.
No, and I would say your wall represents that. I mean, clearly you're risking it to try to get in there and get an opportunity, but that's probably one reason why that and your persistence gives you those opportunities. You know, trying to push the envelope and not so much play it safe.
Yeah.
Because I'm the opposite. That's how I'm here to learn from you and Jordan as well. Because I think, especially when I bow hunt, I try to play it too safe, and it doesn't work out very often.
Well, when you get older, like my age, you kind of don't care. You take a chance. You say,
Well, you did it when you were my age too, so I don't know.
True, yeah.
A lot of these deer right here came from public land around here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, probably 80%. Well, not now as much, but I want to say 70% of the deer that you see came from public land here, 70s and 80s and 70s and 80s when there was no deer and we didn't have private land to hunt.
Yeah.
And which I wasn't even thought of back then, but you know, that's something that he taught me a lot, you know, is push in as close to the thicket. Now I may not push in as far as he does to the thicket because I don't care where they bed as much as, because a deer can bed in 15 different places in this area. And I know that he agrees to that. Like I focus on food and then go based off of that. I go a little bit farther off food, but there's a reason why whenever y'all come to my house and you'll see I don't have as many deer dead as he does, you know. But I mean, he's got 35 years on me, so.
Well, I'm older.
So,
Jordan is ahead of me when I was that age. I will say that.
Well, I had a lot more opportunities.
I had a good teacher.
Well, I had a lot more opportunities than he had, you know, because he was playing ball a whole lot, you know, and I barely finished college, you know. He went to Lenore-Ryan, played on full scholarship, played semi-pro baseball and stuff like that. So, you know, he's too humble to be on a podcast. I'll just be honest with you. He needs it. Yeah, but he's
Don't want to boast too much.
there's a wall full of archery trophies and baseball trophies over there that you don't know if you noticed that or not. And that's only about a quarter of what it used to be. So he's threw the rest of them away. So, but yeah, he's killed a lot of deer, and just it's funny to see like how he hunts. He hunts the exact same way as he did back whenever. If we go hunting now, he's gonna guard hold me so he can go shoot the deer, and I'm gonna go sit over. That's what he's gonna do.
No, I'd rather see you get it now. I don't care.
I love it.
As long as I can get one a little bigger than what you get.
That's what I'm saying. He's gonna put me on a 120-inch 8-point, but he's gonna chase the 130.
Yeah.
We killed a couple big deer a couple years ago. He had 2 big bucks coming into this place, and he shot one of them. And I said, well, Dad, since you shot that one, it was opening weekend. I said, well, since you shot that one, can I go after the other one? He said, I guess. And then I went and shot it, and it was that 137 point I was telling you about. You'll see it tonight. And they were both, I mean, his deer was like mid to upper 20s, and mine was, and this is out of the same tree a day apart. And And I was like, that's pretty good, 250 inches of horn out of one tree in 2 days. So, that was an easy one. I like those. I like it whenever Daddy finds them. It made me feel like a kid again.
Daryl, there's a lot of kind of talk about, but the one thing, talking about, again, being aggressive, do you think that came about because of the low deer numbers, and in order to find deer, you had to push the envelope?
Yeah, I think so. That had a lot to do with it, because I'd go times, days I wouldn't see a deer, and I thought, well, I'm going to go push this a little further in there, I think that had a whole lot to do with it.
And in regards to that, could you describe to everybody what does a bedding thicket look like to you in the mountains?
In the mountains, one of our biggest bedding areas, these laurel thickets. We got some giant laurel thickets, and those deer love those laurels because they feel safe in there. But they do bed on the ridge tops too, because they like to see, some of those bucks will get right on even though it's open, they like to see a long ways. But ridge tops and laurel thickets, and then we have some where the timber's been cut, those cut over areas. They like to bed in those, that's one of the biggest things. But I'd probably say our number one bedding area would be those big giant laurel thickets.
Is the laurel thickets one of the, I guess, more consistent bedding areas that you've had success hunting in and around compared to like the ridge tops and the clear cuts?
Probably so. Yeah, I would say overall they're a little better to read those because there's an edge on those laurels, and then those trails will come right out of there, and sometimes you get over on where they've cut the timber, you can be scratching their head which way they're going to come out sometimes, and the food is so big and vast in some of that cut over areas. But those laurel thickets are a good way to find the distinct trails coming out of there, and stuff.
So we've hunted a decent amount of laurel the last 5 or 6 years on public land in a bunch of different states, including Alabama. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's always one of those things that's challenging because, you'll get in one laurel thicket, it might be chest high to you, maybe head high. In some places, it's 7-8 foot tall. Mm-hmm. But when I would say the challenge is some of it seems so dense, it's hard to try to get an opportunity to shoot into it or get opportunities to set up somewhere closer inside of it versus the edge. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about sometimes pushing the envelope and you're trying to get in there with them.
Yeah.
What does a situation like that look like? Is it like kind of more patchy laurel? Is it that real dense laurel that you're trying to get into?
Sometimes you'll have some that's more open. If it's more mature or whatever, it'll get larger, and there'll be some openings in those little valleys sometimes, enough to... I've shot a lot of deer right in the center of those laurel thickets before, where you could find a good opening or where they're crossing or something. But it's tough. Some of their mountains especially toward the Tennessee area up that way, it's just solid laurel. I mean, just about the only way to hunt it's off of the edge somehow, Find the buck sign off the edge or something. It can be tough. That's what's made it tougher than a lot of these Midwest states and stuff, where you can walk flat land. And I mean, it's tough hunting out there too, but our mountain region is tough in those big mountains and stuff.
And the interesting thing about you, which the listeners and viewers kind of come to understand this a little bit later on, but you've hunted all over the place.
Yeah.
It's not just North Carolina. You've hunted the Midwest, all over the South, kind of going up the Northeast a little bit.
Yeah.
Kill deer all over the place. But would you say, are you more passionate about trying to kill a good deer in North Carolina versus other states?
I think I'd rather... Right here at my home, I wish I could kill a Boone and Crockett deer, which I've not ever done here in North Carolina. Had the opportunity one time and snapped on one with a gun. Snapped on a big buck that I felt like would have made Boone and Crockett. But, I think I'd rather shoot a 170-inch deer that I had here than I would a 190-inch deer in Kansas or something. That's the way I kind of feel at your home state,
I can relate with that. What's the story on that buck you snapped on?
I went up on some public land, and there was a guy that he got a picture of this buck on private land, but it joined the public at the base of the mountain. and he said, I can't find this deer. He said, go up in there and see if you can find it. I think it's on that public land up there real high. And in that mountain range, it's very steep in there. So I got all the way to the top of that mountain, and I found some big scrapes, and I found giant trees rubbed. Well, there was
And mind you, this is late December.
Yeah.
This is like right before Christmas.
Well, there was a big rock cliff there with a lot of laurel, but it was flat right there, and some trails coming out of those laurels. But this huge rub, I said, it's got to be this deer. So I set up in there. The first time I set in there, here comes a doe out, and I saw that buck coming, and we guessed it. We had pictures of it, guessing it in the 170s. And he comes straight at me, and I waited for him to turn. He turned at 30 yards. And I have a little 243 when my dad bought me when I was 10 years old. And he turned broadside, and I snapped on him. I had a bullet. I don't know, the bullet was bad or something, and he took off, went over the mountain. And
well, what he didn't tell you was it was like 10 degrees that morning.
yeah, it was 12 degrees when I left the truck.
And he had hunted that morning, and he went back in that evening. He hunted in a little bit different area trying to find where it's coming in, and he had took his gun and put it in the gun case. And we think, because the guy that gave him the tip on where that deer was is like, he holds some world records from shooting guns. And he said what he thinks happened was moisture got in that firing pin and just frozen it. Now, when here's what's funny, he found the bullet, went back up there and found the bullet, and there was what'd you do? You threw the bullet, right? And he got so mad, he threw the bullet.
I just threw it down.
Yeah, and he comes up there, and he found his bullet again, and it had the impression on the back of the primer, but it wasn't deep. So what we think is either oil had trapped some water in there. You know, if you don't really dry your gun out before you go and hunt, sometimes that'll happen. But the little bit of water, I think, caused that primer to hit it slow, and it didn't go off. And this deer, I showed them a picture of that deer.
Did you?
Yeah.
He was a giant deer. And
he had like 12-inch brow tines. He was a monster.
Yeah, we don't usually have that here. That was just an unusual situation. I tried him a little. We didn't have much longer that year to try him, because that was around Christmas, wasn't it?
It was December. It was December the 19th when you snapped on him.
But that's my biggest opportunity in North Carolina.
You had a couple other big deer opportunities down eastern North Carolina.
Yeah.
One question that comes to mind when you're talking about that is, that's a giant. I mean, that's a world-class deer. But you've killed a lot of really nice bucks up here in the mountains too, that are mature deer. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, is there any consistent factor you see between all the bigger bucks or all the mature deer that you've either killed or had opportunities at over the years around here? What do they do different from all the other deer that makes them so hard to kill?
Well, these deer here just don't seem like we have as big a deer here. It's like they get 5 to 6 years old, and they might be 135 inches or something. And I don't know. Seem like rephrase that question exactly.
What he's saying is like, what does a big mature buck do differently than a 3 or 4 year old buck?
Oh yeah, okay.
That you're seeing from around here compared to anywhere else.
Yeah, they a lot of night movement from those big deer. I mean, I started using cameras. I've got hooked on. Jordan got me hooked on the cameras, and that tells me a lot about those big deer move at night a lot. Until they get about pre-rut and stuff, and they get really hard to see. As they get older. We see those 2 and 3 year old deer come out in the daylight, and when they get about 4 to 5 right here. And we have a lot of pressure too, that makes a lot of difference. And it gets tough when they get 4 to 5 years old. And we got some places to hunt that you just can't hardly see a good deer until about November, when it gets close to the rut. And it makes a big deal. They're especially smart here. They're hard to see when they get about 5 years old.
Yeah, we've talked to guys all over the place now. I mean, we've been all over the eastern United States recording podcasts, talking to different guys. And I'm just curious, I want to run this by you because this comes up from time to time, and that is that you'll find where the deer are at. You know, most of the deer hanging out in this like laurel thicket, for instance. And then the big buck, like the old mature deer, he won't be like in there with them. He'll be off kind of by himself somewhere. Do you find that around here too?
Yeah, we sure do. Yeah, he'll be in a different spot, or it can be really tough. I mean, one place I had last year, I got several mature bucks. The biggest buck I wanted to shoot wouldn't show up. You know, he wouldn't show up for about once a week, or it's just funny how they do when they get that age, and they get smart and sometimes wise to those cameras, I think, here, you know. So yeah, same situation here. It gets tough to get the one you want. That's the one that won't show up. Seems like.
Now, you're talking about using cameras, but before you started implementing cameras, what was your MO, method of operation, for trying to target and tag a mature buck up here in the mountains?
Well, a lot of times the size of the rubs would help. You know, you find those big rubs sometimes, big horn trees. It would kind of tell, you know, the indentions in the tree, the marks, the rough burrs on the base of the horns, you know, can kind of tell. So that looks like a good deer. He's really torn that tree up, you know, and that's kind of helped. And sometimes you can see the size of the tracks here, you know, in the scrapes, you know. That's a really large foot. That's got to be a mature deer, you know. Before cameras, that's kind of what we had to go on, the rubs and the size of the tracks and stuff like that, you know. And sometimes the droppings, you know, can help a little bit. So that's pretty much how I had to do it.
Well, that's why I want to talk to you about woodsmanship and your skill set when it comes to woodsmanship, because it's something we talk about on the podcast a good bit with guests. It's something you can't buy, and it's hard to learn from someone just telling you. A lot of it's self-taught, in the field, lessons learned. What are some of those important woodsmanship skills that you've kind of built over the years and the decades hunting up here, that's helped you be successful again, killing as many deer as you have?
A lot of times it seems like I can look up in the woods and I can pick what trees what, like a red oak or something like that. I've got pretty good at this. I say, that's a big mature red oak right there. And now I can just see the leaves, and when they start turning in the fall, a lot of times I know that that's a big red oak or that's a white oak. And sometimes the red oaks will be more green longer here. You'll see that, and sometimes I can look on the side of a mountain. I said, that's a bunch of oaks right there. And I've seen that before, and I take off into that area, and it works. Not always, but I thought, well, that's where the most nuts and stuff. But being able to determine the trees, and white oaks are pretty easy to pick out because the color's lighter, you know. And that's the first thing I'll go straight to, you know. I've just being able to look at the terrain and stuff like that, and the trees make a lot of difference, I think, here. Just being able to determine where that food is, it's a lot to do with it.
That, you know, I agree, and we're going to talk about kind of your thoughts on hunting feed trees in a little bit, but what about sign reading? What have you learned about sign reading in the mountains, like when it comes to buck sign, but it's deer sign as well?
It's in our mountains, it's pretty easy to see that sign. You'll just see the leaves all scuffed up, and some places it looks like it's been baited, you know, under those trees. They tear up the leaves pretty good. You know they're coming there a lot, and that makes a big difference. It's pretty easy to read it on those soft side of those mountains like you're talking about. Sometimes they'll rake the leaves all the way down the hill, you know, because they've fed on those acorns so much. But you can pick out the sign pretty good here because of the way the leaves and stuff are, you know. Unless you get into the flat ground, you know, and stuff. It makes it tough and hard surface places, stuff like that.
Also, when it comes to sign reading, you said like big rubs is something that seems to get you excited, especially big rubs that have a lot of I want to call it damage to the tree, not like a smooth road, but it's got a lot of real deep grooves into it.
Yeah.
And probably a lot more like fraying of the bark from like the big burrs and everything,
Yeah.
which typically is going to tell you it's probably more of a mature deer.
Yeah.
Do you put any weight in scrapes, as in weight of importance for you?
I do. That's something I really love to hunt a scrape, especially pre-rut, right at the start. To me, if you can determine that the right scrape, like to me, there's a primary scrape that they'll keep checking, you know, and the does keep coming back to that scrape. I've shot a lot of deer over scrapes, and sometimes it seems like they make them and don't even come back to them, you know. And I like to find what I would call a community scrape or something, you know, something. Sometimes every buck in the country will check that one scrape. It's funny. I've scratched my head a lot over those scrapes, you know, and I thought, this is not working, you know. I hadn't seen a buck here all week, but then you get on the right one with the right scent, but it's pretty easy here to determine if they keep coming back to the same spot, you know, and now we can put cameras on those and test them, you know. But I love hunting that here, you know, the first, second week, November is a really good time to kill a good deer, you know.
Problem is, we're always gone to the Midwest.
Yeah.
And the best time to kill a big deer here, we're usually gone, which this part of North Carolina, your best time to kill a big deer is open week. Just always has been, always will be, because they're just not pressured, and you know you can still catch them on summer patterns and stuff. The acorns aren't falling, maybe some apple trees are falling, but I mean, let's just face it, you can bait here. So if we focus mostly early season on private land, you can do that. We still don't. I mean, if I've killed 150 deer in my life, I've killed 10 on bait, and probably I bet you've killed 5. And you've killed 500 deer.
Bait, but
you probably killed over 500 deer, and he's killed 5 deer on bait. So, but it's just the simple fact is late October here is the best whenever you're coming to hunting scrapes, and because they can scent check it very easily here. Mm-hmm. A buck can scent check a scrape from 150 yards here, so you can put a lot of weight on scrapes if you'll just know where he's traveling to and from, mm-hmm. where he's wanting to go, and then it's fun.
So while we're talking about scrapes, Darrell, I want to know, what is your most memorable hunt in North Carolina on a scrape? Do you have one that comes to mind?
I know which one it is.
You have to remind me, Jordan. I'm thinking.
Probably Burgess Parsons.
Yeah.
Those 2 deer right there, right behind you.
Yeah. I guess so. I don't know how many bucks. I've got so many different ones. It's just pretty hard to.
Well, just one that comes to mind. Like, how did I want to know kind of you telling the story of one of these successful hunts. Mm-hmm. But like, how'd you find the scrape, the setup, and how the hunt played out?
Well, that where Jordan was talking about, there's a big ridge there, and these trails just funneled right into that situation, and it's kind of a flat ridge top right there, and right along that ridge top was just a perfect funnel. You know,
there's always a bunch of scrapes right there on that. It's a saddle.
Yeah.
And right in that saddle, there'll be 3 or 4 big scrapes in the size of this room right here.
But I don't know how many bucks just right there in that little valley. It just looks like that's where the deer need to walk. You know, that's one of my favorite things is to funnel as many trails coming to the scrapes as I can. And I like a little saddle or something right on a ridge top, you know, where it funnels the deer in, you know, and where Jordan was talking about, I don't know how many bucks I shot right there in that one spot right there. So that place came into my mind. But I like those little ridge tops. Seem like we got to elevate here. It's the best way to work the wind. But that was one of my favorite places where Jordan was talking about.
Tell him the story when you killed that. I guess it'd be the left 8-pointer right there. Yeah, it would be the left one. You know, that's when you had to go back the next day and find it.
That one?
Yeah, that would be the one because there's a couple big scrapes right there. And that's what they're asking.
Well, that was the same. That was the same thing. But he came into that scrape, checked the scrape, but I shot him back. I hit him back. Yeah. He took a step, and I hit him back in there. And I left him alone and went and found him the next morning. He was laying there. But that was a really good spot for us. It was on a mountaintop with a lot of acres.
Killed my first deer there.
Yeah. I walked Jordan way back in there. He didn't want to walk in there, but I
8. It's 2 miles from the truck.
He shot a button. Bud.
He said this kid's gonna learn.
I think I told that story on the last podcast. I was like, I thought Dad was Superman because he put a 60-pound button head on his back and carried it out. And I still have that deer mounted.
Yeah.
And that place was really good because you'd walk in, especially with a gun. That was probably one of the best gun hunting spots that we ever had.
Yeah,
you
it
could
was a good spot.
It was just a bunch of ridges and come in, a couple of big funnels there, and there's always bucks. It was just like the prettiest saddle what you ever see. Those apple trees on the left side. There's oak trees all down that saddle. There was a road bed kind of coming around the side of that, and there'd be 20 horn trees the size of your arm and wrist, and that you killed 25 bucks on that ridge. Probably
I shot a bunch.
The biggest deer you ever saw in that area was right there.
Yeah, I saw a big 12-pointer in there.
Probably 160.
I saw a nice buck in there. But that place, like, it had everything. It had crab apples, and red oaks, white oaks. Had it all,
Within bow shot.
Yeah.
So, while we're talking about scrapes here, Darrell, how do you like to position a stand on a scrape? When you find the right one that's getting the right activity that you're interested in, how do you like to position your shots?
With a bow, I like to set up about 20 to 25 yards or something, and I like to back off a little bit. I don't like to get too close. I don't like a shot downward. I don't like to hit them up toward the back strap down in that way. I like to back off a little, like a 20, 25-yard shot. One of my favorite to set on a scrape. Get the wind right and sit back, get hidden good, and hopefully if you're guessing the right direction. I don't like them to come in the wrong way, straight at me, or, and I want to try my best to get that broadside angle, coming into that scrape. If you can find some kind of trail or some kind of angle going to those scrapes, is what you want, especially with a bow. It don't make as much difference with a gun, but with a bow, it's all about that angle to me, getting that broadside shot. And I don't like to get too high. I'm not a really big elevated hunter. I like 15 to 18 feet, That's kind of my setup would be the ideal place to get on a scrape or whatever.
So also, do you like to cheat yourself towards one side or the other of a trail coming into the scrape, or are you kind of more positioning for a shot in the scrape?
Maybe just before the scrape, maybe because I don't know when they get in that scrape, what they might do if they turn or something. I'd rather almost shoot them right just before the scrape. That's kind of what I would think would be the ideal thing.
Now, with you hunting, Andrew's a big scrape junkie, so I'm sure he's got a bunch of questions about it. I've got another one on scrapes. With you hunting scrapes as long as you have, and I can't imagine how long that's been that you've been focusing on scrapes.
Yeah.
How often do you see mature bucks trying to come a good ways downwind of that scrape and scent check it, not going to that scrape?
Pretty much. I mean, maybe 50% of the time. They don't always stick their nose in that. And that's another thing about bow hunting, I think. Well, they may come on that scrape on the other side and just scent check it. So that's a big key, too, to get in enough distance where you shoot them with a bow, because a lot of times they just don't walk up there and put their nose in that scrape. I've seen a lot of, especially the bigger bucks, they will just get down. I see them do that right there, and that's all they do sometimes, They don't always just go and stick their nose right there in it and turn perfectly broadsided, whatever they, you want to get that right angle like I was talking a minute ago. So it's pretty tricky sometimes because they don't always come just picture perfect into the scrape,
What about for situations when you have like a scrape, like in a saddle where there's a bunch of different points of travel deer can get to it, versus off the edge of a ridge where you get one like maybe next to a flat and it drops off, or like down in a drainage and it drops off? Mm-hmm. For consideration of looking at where a deer could scent check it from, how do you play that in your mind of how you should position so you hopefully don't have a deer come from directly below you or behind you? I mean, that's the
That's
big
a
thing.
tough question.
I know
I get that.
but that's something I'm thinking of in the mountains because we've hunted some of this stuff, and we've, you find some scrapes, and I'm like, they're right next to a really steep drop off. Okay, I can get away with probably a little bit there if the wind thermals are dropping off the edge. But if it's on a big flat or in the middle of a saddle,
it's almost a hunter instinct. It's almost a guess. I mean, you just think, well, I hope I'm doing this right, And a lot of times I've said, dang, I set up on the left side over there, and he walked down that way, and it don't always work out, but you have to. So I've done it correctly 5 times in a row. I thought, boy, that worked out good. Then I've messed up 5 times in a row. It's not always, you don't always do it right.
Mm-hmm. I've got a question about where you find community scrapes, like you're mentioning. We talked about the saddles and just funnel areas, but it's a question we get fairly often about. How would you look at a map, or what are some areas where you would go to looking for a scrape like that? So are there any other terrain features or habitat features where you either see it on a map and want to go to it, or when you're walking through the area, you're like, oh, I need to go over here and make sure there's not a scrape right there?
I don't know. Up here in our mountains, it seems like a flat ridge top where it flattens off is one of the best places to find one here. But that's a good question. I mean,
That or road beds.
Yeah,
Anywhere that there's skidder trails like what you called them earlier, or last time I talked to you about it, and road beds, creek bottoms, and which we don't have a ton. You get kind of toward middle part of North Carolina, and you get those creek bottoms more, and you'll see them here, crossings, creek crossings, and you'll see one scrape. But when you're talking scrape,
they like road beds, like Jordan said. That's a good place to find them, sometimes. But
those ridge tops, boy, they're hard to beat. Those long, flat ridge tops.
Yeah,
and they'll be scattered all over it.
Yeah, but that's one of the best places probably.
And when you talk about ridge tops, are you talking about like big secondary points coming off the main mountain, or are you talking like on the main mountain typically?
A lot of them that comes off of the main top, seems like. You got the real pointed ridge, but seem like those first place that it flattens off right below the high ridge top seems like one of the best places to find those. They're coming around. You got a lot of different angles right there, They're coming around this side or that side or up, or out the flat ridge, and that pinpoints it quite a bit, and I love those spots that comes off of that ridge top and then flattens out. That's one of my favorite spots, and that's where you'll find.
One of these days we got to take them way back in there to where I'm not going to say the name of it, but you'll know what I'm talking about. We're going to take them back in there behind where my favorite ridge is.
Yeah.
Or you've seen the big one. Mm-hmm. And that's where it would be a perfect example of what we talk about. It's a big old huge peak. And then the mountain kind of swags down 100 yards from the peak, 100-yard elevation. And it's just a long, flat ridge for 125 yards. And there's crab apples on it. And then down to the left, it does the same thing off of that, just a long, flat ridge down to apple trees. And there'll be 10 to 20 scrapes on it. And then you go down another one that does the same thing. And that's the problem. That makes it hard to hunt it because we've seen... We should have killed some absolute megas in this place, but
we've killed a lot of bucks right there.
That deer came from it, blade deer. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it's
a couple of them right there at 110 pointer.
Yeah,
but that's a perfect place. This is where Jordan was talking about. It's a high peak right here with no food hardly on it at all. And then another high peak here, and then there's just a flat ridge right there. Every year there's like a community scrape in that spot. It's kind of consistent right there.
It'll be the size of one of your blankets.
Yeah.
And then there'll be 2 or 3 little scrapes right off the side of it.
They always do it. There's something about that spot that they like to put their scent down right there. And
you got a camera on it now, don't you?
No, not right now.
Oh, he pulled it off. Mm-hmm. It's a long ways back. Long ways. Mm-hmm. You'll like it. I don't know if you can make it.
That sounds right up Andrew's alley. I'm like, man, I'm sure there's one closer to the bottom.
Oh, there is. There's a bunch down there toward the bottom. Crab, apple trees, everything. You can imagine.
Let me ask. I want to get both y'all's thoughts on this. But Darrell, I want to start with you first. What do you think, with the success that you've had hunting scrapes over the last handful of decades, and knowing a lot of other deer hunters, I'm sure you met some deer hunters that hate scrapes.
Oh, yeah.
Because we come across them all the time too.
Yep.
What do you think a lot of people are doing wrong when they're hunting scrapes and they're not having success? They're not seeing deer. They're not having opportunities.
Seems like a lot of those scrapes is down in those bottoms, along the creeks or something like Jordan. I think a lot of those are just like night places, or they just come along and make those and sometimes never return. They're just unique places that they can be effective, I think, in certain times of year that they're effective. And you just have to keep watching them and see if they're coming back. And but it's a tricky situation. I know guys that say, I can't kill a deer on a scrape. He said, every time I hunt them, I don't see anything, or I see a doe or something.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't like them, but I personally like them. But it's such a timing thing, I think, to really get on the right ones, And it's a really good thing the pre-rut to me on the scrapes is the best. I don't know what it is. They're coming right back to them, checking them, and they start checking them in the daytime. But I just think a lot of them scrapes are in the wrong place. People are hunting them in the wrong places, I think. Not finding the right ones.
I can kind of go off that, and I agree with that in a lot of ways. I think people put too much stock, and they'll see like a scrape, and they'll say, "Oh gosh, there's a scrape. I need to hunt over because there's been a buck here." And it's true, but spikes can make scrapes, and so it's you need to be like, and this is just based off of my opinion and what he's kind of taught me over the years is. You want to put stock in the scrapes for sure, because they're one of my favorite places too. You know that there was a buck there. It's just like seeing a horn tree. You know that there was a buck there at some point. But you need to have other natural reasons for that buck to be there. And those other reasons for that buck to be there might be food, might be travel, might be bedding, might be anything. Well, bedding up here sometimes can go out the window because they can bed anywhere. So I like food. I focus on food and travel. And if you have multiple trails, if you have a lot of good terrain features that will send that deer to that point. Because like where we live, we don't have like the edge of a cornfield or the edge. We don't see that much. Or we have Christmas tree fields and stuff like that you can be on, and you can kind of see these like road beds where people drive their trucks down for these fields and things like that. But you've got to have, I think where most people mess up is they focus only on that scrape itself, and they don't check, because like in these mountains up here, what you'll see is these bucks will scent check that scrape. They make it one time, they scent check it, but you never saw the deer. It's 100, 125 yards away, and scent checking. You may have heard it or something, but you're like, gosh, I'm hunting the scrape, but he's up there. So I think you've got to be able to pay attention to what's going on around you other than just that scrape.
That's a really good point, and that's actually exactly where my mind went when y'all were going over that, because it's like you kind of got to ask yourself, am I in an area right now where the deer are like actually spending a lot of time?
Coming to, yeah.
Right, because you're talking about those little creek bottom scrapes, and a lot of times when I'll find those and you're standing there and you look around the creek bottom, you're like, are there really deer? Are they coming through here like all the time, or is it just, they just kind of wander through here one day, maybe looking for some food?
Made a scrape just because they wanted to. They got a little mad or something.
Yeah.
There was actually a buck up on the hill that's 75, 100 yards where the deer really want to be, so they got mad, made the scrape here, but they're never going to go back down there again. They just did it as a territory thing. I think a lot of times bucks will do scrapes not to find where the does are. It's just territory. You get mad sometimes, if you want to be a Kyle and punch a wall, that's on you because you want to be territorial or whatever, but you don't normally, you probably aren't going to go back over there and do that again. Deer do that. They're just like humans. They get emotional. Things like that happen. They may not make a scrape for a reason. They just do it.
So Darrell, I'm curious on your thoughts on what Jordan's talking about here, where in the mountains, the bedding can be pretty, I call it blurry. Like there's not just a really good defined place where they're going to bed.
Yeah.
And maybe food can be a little bit more the limiting factor, where you can focus in on that because the deer are going to have to congregate on it. Do you agree with that? Is that what you found in your experience?
Yes. Yeah, the bedding a lot of times can be tricky here because sometimes they may be bedding half a mile away. It can be really tough. In some properties, we can't go to where the bedding area is. We got 20 acres to hunt or something, and you can't go find the bedding. They're bedding somewhere else. But I've actually seen deer in places run 100 yards all the way across a field or something, then come to the food, but the bedding is really, really tricky sometimes. You can't always get up close to the bedding.
That's why he taught me so much about food. It was like being food focused, and then paying attention to where the trails are leading to the food.
Yeah.
And I was big, and I know he did this too. A lot of times you find the place in the evening and then go right back there the next morning and hunt. Give it the evening and the morning and see what the deer are doing, see where they're going to and coming from. And a lot of times that can determine whether you want to sit an observation set, whether you want to sit but a lot of times I know how he is. He don't do observation sets. He does. If I'm going and hang a tree stand, I'm going to go kill. And that's that's what I did too. And that's where that aggressiveness comes from. So it's just.
I probably shot more deer on the first set of sign that I've seen, or first or second, quick sometime, it seemed like I've killed more deer doing that, putting that stand up and hunting it natural, and here they come, and you keep going there a lot of times, and then you don't, all of a sudden you don't see them, putting your scent in there or something, but.
Finding sign before daylight.
Yeah.
With a flashlight.
Mm-hmm.
That happens a lot.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about changing food sources throughout the year. Like, we talked a lot about feed trees so far. They keep coming up over and over again. And y'all open in September for archery. Yeah. And I think when we were here last September, I think some of the white oaks were like just starting to drop.
I think the wind was knocking them out.
I think the wind were knocking them out.
It was thunderstorms.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do that.
We found one spot where there was pretty good feed sign, and we found rubs under it.
Yeah.
Didn't see nothing. Hunted them. Actually, I did find another spot where the oaks were actually dropping really good, and I saw some deer right there.
Yeah.
Had some does come by, but didn't have a buck or anything come by me. But, so, are you mainly just looking for oak trees as soon as the season opens up, or what does it look like?
Right at the first, it's sometime, like you said, if it's real windy or a lot of rain or something, you'll find those acorns laying on the ground right at the first, and you'll find some sign under them, but it's usually about the end of September, up in October before they start coming down, But one of my favorite things, if I could find a white oak and those acorns start falling, then you find that buck sign immediately. Right there's rubs under that big white oak. I've shot a lot of deer doing that right there, because that's one of the best things right at the start, I think, especially the white oaks. We got a lot more red oaks, and it makes it tougher on those red oaks because there's so many of them a lot of times,
And they'll fall last week of August, first week of September a lot of times.
Yeah, sometimes they fall early.
They can fall that early. But he focuses on apple trees early, because we got a lot of properties with apple trees.
Yeah, I got some cameras now on apple trees, and that's a really good starting point.
If you can keep the bears all the way from them.
Yeah, bears. We got a bear problem. We got a lot of bears in our mountains and tearing up our cameras, and they actually run the deer off sometimes. You get a good buck on camera, and the bears keep coming in there, and then all of a sudden you don't see your bucks. But that's a good thing to start in our mountains, is on the apple trees. And there's occasionally you can get in September, get on the acorns good early,
After that early time frame, or well, actually, no, hold on. During that early time frame, kind of tying together the feed trees and the buck sign, what about a feed tree? Like, if you find, let's say you go out in the mountains and you hear the blue jays cutting up, you hear the squirrels, you can hear a good tree dropping somewhere. You walk up in there and, how do you read that situation to say, okay, there's probably a buck coming to this tree. This is where I need to hunt.
Sometimes the buck's just not coming there. You may have a few does finding that or something, but you just have to keep looking. And they don't always put buck sign down under those trees, Sometimes it's just trial and error. There's a lot of tracks here. I just got to give it a try, You can't. always determine. They will always rub trees all around those acorns and stuff, and I have put cameras on oak trees if there was a lot of sign on it before, but that's a tough question if you're not finding the buck sign. I've just had a lot of times just put up on all those tracks underneath the tree and just kind of hope there's a good one coming there,
The question I always asked him whenever I was a kid was, how is it that I can go and see 10 to 12 deer? You put me, it's absolutely murdered, and there's buck sign under it. And there'd be 10 to 15 horn trees under 2 big white oaks that's fallen. I'm going, how is it that you put me here and I see 15 deer? Biggest thing I see was a 6-pointer. And then you go 200 yards, 150 yards away, and you shoot the 8-pointer. How? And he still has never answered that question. I don't know if he don't want to
go back in the thicket.
Then that's honestly what it would be. Is like the sign is completely there, but the buck had already moved on.
To me, I don't know. If you just think like a big buck, just think, where can I get away and stay back in a thicket to where I'm safe? I don't have to come out till after dark or something, and then just take a chance and push back into, like I was talking about, push back into that thicket, or just try it, close to his bedding area or something. That's how I've shot a lot of bucks, just trial and error.
Mm-hmm. How does that change as you start going through the season? So early season, the trees are starting to drop, everything's good. As you start moving into the rut and pre-rut, how do food sources or feed trees specifically start factoring into that time of year?
I think sometimes they eat acorns so much they almost get tired of them or start changing some, When it gets up into October, that's when you're really trying to find those scrapes in the rub trees, and it changes. I've seen them eat red oaks so much, and then all of a sudden they're not there much anymore. They go off somewhere else and toward a cornfield or grass fields and stuff. That's why they call it October lull. I think because it can be tough to try to determine that food in October, and just trying your best to find those rub trees is one of the best things, I think, in October. Just find where he's at.
Jordan, do you differ on that?
Not really, I don't. I think a lot of times that you've got, it's like, you want to eat at the same restaurant all the time. It's kind of the same situation. If you eat Golden Corral every single day, there's a buffet. You got clover out there, you've got acorns, you've got apples, and there's multiple different type of acorns. You know that. We talked about the buck oaks, and y'all call them, what's it, chestnut oak?
Mountain chestnuts.
Mountain chestnuts, and which they don't hardly eat here, but you got white oaks, red oaks, and they hammer them so quick because you think they waited all year for these 4 to 6 weeks of these acorns dropping, they hammer, and then you get that late October, the bucks are starting to kind of have something a little bit different on their mind, and so they're feeding, but they're trying to find those first does and things and laying down scrapes. But I focus on food, and one of the biggest reasons why I really focus on food, even all the way up till November, was because of something that he taught me. I killed a big buck in Ohio, November I guess 6th, on public land, and it rained. But I'll never forget. So my dad, we pulled in this place. We had a good connection up there, and he said he had just moved down to this one area, big old huge piece of public. It's 60,000 acres, and not in one section obviously, but we pull in, and Dad said, "I'm gonna go this way." I'll say, "All right, I'll go that way." And about an hour and a half later, I finally find what I'm looking for, and it's just one of these flats. There's a couple scrapes on it. And there's 2 big red oaks right there that's fallen. It's November the 5th at this point. Well, I go just a little bit farther to trying to find some buck sign. I was like, well, if I don't see what I want to see here, I'm going to see on these red oaks in the morning. I hunted that evening, didn't see any deer, and I was trying to walking out, and I hear somebody whistling. Now, mind you, Dad walked 1 mile this way, I walked 1 mile that way. We ended up on the same ridge, and he was sitting 25 yards off those red oaks, and I was 75 yards from him, didn't even know it. But and then the next morning, I went right back there, and I killed close to 140-inch 8-pointer.
Nice buck.
Yeah, but he was coming to those acorns. November the 5th or November the 6th. And so that's the reason why. And the only trees on that whole entire property that were green were red oak acorns. And it was in a red oak. And that's like, if you're looking for that in November, a lot of times that can be a big buck recipe because that's the last bit of acorns that are fresh. So, I mean, I put a lot of stock in the food because deer have to eat. They're going to eat all the time, all day, every day. So they can bed anywhere and they can blaze scrapes anywhere. But the does are going to have to eat, whether it's pre-rut or rut. They're going to eat. The bucks will follow if it's that time of year. They're going to go to where they think the does are eating. So I put a lot more probably stock into food than he does, but it's just how it goes. That's just how I am.
Well, it's similar to one of our past guests, Jonathan Moreland from Arkansas, who's a big buck killer from out there.
He's the one that killed that 200-inch deer with a recurve or whatever.
Yeah, mega giant with a recurve coming to check red oaks. I think it was close to being the rut, but he was coming to red oaks feeding. And when he killed that deer coming out of a big thicket, and he pretty much every one of his big bucks he's ever killed has been associated with feed trees, oaks dropping, no matter the time of the season, as long as he can find those. So there's commonality between it. And I brought this up with him in a way. We've had guys on the podcast that was like, you can't kill big deer on feed trees. And yeah. Well, that's what I was going to talk about. But like, there are some people out there like you can't be consistent killing mature bucks, not even big, just mature bucks on feed trees specifically. Darrell, like, what's your thoughts on that?
I feel like he's kind of right in a way. You know, it's certain times I think you can, but I wouldn't say that would be the way to kill a big one all the time. You know, I know they're going to come to food, but sometimes I think acorns are just kind of temporary in a way. It's a September, October thing, you know. But I think more big bucks are killed checking for does, checking scrapes, coming out of thickets, you know, that back route instead of that pretty oak ridge or something. But there's times there's been a lot of big bucks killed on the acorns, but I think there's more killed on other ways, you know.
So
another question I had.
That's where we kind of differ.
Well, I was going to say, Jordan, what about you?
Yeah, that's kind of so. I agree with him. Obviously, he's got a lot more time in the woods than I have, and so it's kind of hard not to agree with that. Obviously, we know that's the reason why so many people focus on bedding and things like that. It's because it's hard to kill a big deer on food. Now, unless it's like food plots and things like that, you know, out in the Midwest. But here, and I think the reason why he's like that is because there's literally food everywhere. All of these mountains are hardwoods, like everywhere. And so you've got to focus on something a little bit different. And what separates him versus everybody else is because you can see all that buck sign on food. You can see all this deer sign, but that may be just after legal shooting light. And I know that he's hunted those oak trees and countless number of big bucks walk under him and you just can't see his sight pins. It's too late. And then, but I focus on food a lot too now because we don't have the property like the private land that we used to, so we kind of got to focus on food a little bit more. And that might be why, because, you know, back whenever he was growing up, he had a lot more private land than I do now because nobody cared back then when you deer hunted. But now we have a lot more small properties, and so you got to kind of be focused on what you have, and we don't have a lot of bedding on a lot of our properties. Now, we got a couple really, really ginormous piece of properties, but the other people hunt them too. So you got to be careful with that. It's just, I don't know, I focus on food a little bit more than he does probably. And, you know, only because our properties are smaller than what they used to be.
Well, and I bring that up just because we don't see, we've only had a handful of 710 episodes we've done on this show. Only a handful of guys we've ever had on that hunted mountains, which we've interviewed a lot of mountain hunters, actually hunt oaks in the mountains and have success killing deer on feed trees in the mountains. Both of y'all have done that. But it's not, for some reason, not very common that we run across guys that hunt mountains and hunt feed sign and feed trees at certain times of the year and have success killing bucks doing that. So It's real common in the river bottoms. Guys on the Mississippi River, those big river bottoms, stuff like that, have a lot of success doing it. But we just don't see a lot of guys in the mountains really focus on that a whole bunch. So it's cool to have that conversation with you too.
Well, what helped me when I was growing up, whenever I got my license, when Dad was a postman for years, and so he would have time off during the week, and so he'd be off on Wednesday, and he'll say, "I just found a white oak that was raining," and I was maybe in work, and I was off on that Saturday, so. You find a white oak that literally just started falling, that 2 days before it wasn't falling, and I could get in there a couple of days later, and that's when the big buck is there, and then I have an opportunity. Now, I didn't always kill it, but I'm telling you, like, you can focus on food to find the deer. That doesn't mean to kill it. So whenever I focus on food, it's to find them. Where are they going to? What's their end destination? And then try to go and kill them off of that. And I know that's exactly what he does, like, because food is the fastest way to find deer. And then you can go off of that to go kill the deer. That's just my opinion, and that's how I've killed a lot of deer. And sometimes you just can't go to where you need to go, and it might be a little bit too late in the day, or you just don't have permission on the property. But if you're on public land, you're like, well, I mean, there's 70 other places that look exactly like this. I'm just going to try this and then go off of that. That's what I do. I know that's what he does too.
Yeah.
Another question I had was about the sign and sign rating specifically. What is it about buck sign that makes you think it's nighttime sign versus daytime sign? Is it just the concentration of sign?
Yeah, sometimes it's where the location is, I think. It's a big open area, that big open ridge or something. This seems like it's going to be nighttime if it's a big open spot where a buck don't feel comfortable or something, But if I find all those rubs and buck sign back toward a thicket close to it or something, I just feel better about that sometimes, than and that's hard to determine sometimes, if it's night or day, I've scratched my head a lot, I thought, well, this bucks are not getting here quick enough, but that can determine the bedding can have a lot to do with that too. It may be they may be bedding from the neighbors, and then they're not getting there till 10 o'clock at night from the neighbors, and putting all that sign down at night or something. And then sometimes the bedding may be on the property you're at, and you're close to right there where they're laying right there. I think the bedding has a lot to do with that, how close the deer are to that food, sometimes. And the terrain, it varies a lot. 5 places, it'll all be 5 different situations, seem like.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to kind of how we started this conversation. Like, you just got to get out there and try it.
I know it.
Learn by trial and error.
Well, that's why they get big racks. They get smart and they get big, and they figure this stuff out.
More people kill big bucks off of trial and error than a trail camera or a food plot ever has. I mean, honestly, it's just getting out there and getting in the woods. I mean,
I saw a survey one time in Outdoor Life that how many big bucks was killed just off of a thicket next to a house, or people had killed their first deer. They didn't know what they was doing. They were in an odd spot, and they killed them down below a garden or something like that. It was pretty interesting. They took 100 deer, I think it was, or something, and they asked the questions on the hunters, and about half of them had never killed a big buck, so it's hard to say, that big buck can be following that doe, and you can kill him in somebody's yard,
the best meme on the internet. I know everybody's seen it, where it says you do all this preparation, hard work, and you hunt just for, and then it's a picture of Dwight Schrute in a orange toboggan. It said you do all this preparation work for this Jimmy John to take a shotgun and go kill him with his Marlboro Reds in one in the mouth and with a shotgun in the other hand. And it's, I mean, honestly, there's a ton of truth to that. Because I think one thing that I know Dad taught me was keep the pressure down. It's like, a lot of times the reason why we can kill deer on food if we're going to hunt food is because we don't pressure it, or we're hunting it once, maybe twice, and then we're changing. A lot of times that helps.
Yeah, and y'all were both talking about, like, kind of staying mobile, and Darrell, you're talking about, a lot of times you're killing a lot of these bucks at first, second sit. A lot of times the first sit you're going into a spot. I want to talk about how you've evolved as what a lot of people call a mobile hunter. Because a lot of people think of, climbers and stuff like that, but you're a little bit different. So, how did you come up with your style of hunting mobile that you've been doing for the last ever how many decades?
I used to just take a little small stand like a windwalker, and I have a fold-up steps. I'd carry about 8 of them in a little fanny pack, and I'd walk. And I sometimes never been in there. I'd walk in there till I find that sign, and I'd put up on it, and I've hunted 15 different places in a week before, And sometimes I think if you keep doing that, that's one of the best ways to kill a buck, because you're going in there fresh, and putting up on that sign for the first time. I killed a lot of deer. I thought, gosh, look at all this sign. Get the wind right and put that. Me and Jordan both can put up a stand. He can do it faster than me, but we could put a stand up in 5 minutes probably.
Start to finish, yeah.
We're in a stand fast. We'd use those screw-in steps for years and go up a tree. And
Have you changed anything from whenever you were, say, 20 years old to now? I think that might be kind of more into the question.
I'm a little bit slower.
Like, is there any style?
I'm a little bit safer than I used to be. I didn't wear a safety belt for years and years. I'd go up in that stand as fast as I could and get in there. Yeah, I've changed a lot. And used to deer hunt more. Now I'm looking more toward that bigger rack. I let a lot of bucks go now. A lot of nice bucks.
With another part of what you're saying there, you've mentioned it a couple times now, is getting the wind right. That's another thing about hunting up here, where the mobile hunting gives you a big advantage, because it truly is just unpredictable. When you get up in the mountains, like, that wind's just going to do what it's going to do. So it sounds like you get to the spot, assess whatever the wind is doing, and then you pick a tree. I'm assuming downwind of wherever you think the buck's going to be standing.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times I've just put up the way the wind's coming. I said, well, it's going that way. I think it's going to stay that way because it's pretty windy, Guessing that wind has been one of the toughest things we've had to do, And we got some stationary stands. There's only one way we can hunt that property, and you just sometimes have to hope. Or we check our phones too. I have to always check the wind on my phones, but it's in the mountain region, it's just not all. It seems like it's about 50% right in the mountains. And a lot of times, sometimes you can't tell exactly where the deer's coming from, and you just have to hope that you're right, But yeah, we get a lot of swirls in the wind in the mountains. I don't know. There's some places that we've learned on property that the wind's kind of dominant in one direction. You go up on that mountainside, and it's pretty much blowing that way most of the time, And a lot of times the wind here, in the mornings, it'll go up, The thermals will start going up, and then in the evenings, starts coming down, You can kind of look at that too, but it's tricky.
What were you about to say before I cut you off?
No. I thought I saw that. I just got to make sure I don't forget it, because it's not the right time to ask it, but it's really interesting. One thing that I'm interested in learn a little bit more is when we say, of course, mobile hunting for audience members is just not having a pre-hung stand. And that's what we mean by mobile. Like, you're carrying whether you're hunting off the ground or you're using a saddle or a lock on or a climber, like, you're carrying it with you and you're, positioning every single time.
Yeah.
I know one thing that people hear you say this, and it sounds super simple, but I think it's a lot more complex than what it really is you find sign that looks really good, you set up on it, you kill a buck on it, is how to determine if that is the spot, because I think we're all guilty of, you find something that looks real good, like, Jordan, you mentioned this earlier, like in Ohio, you find something that looks good, but you keep looking further for other sign, and then you're like, well, now what? It's a loaded question, but how have you worked through that over the decades of bow hunting, of knowing when to stop and actually climb a tree versus pushing further forward?
I know that's a tough question, because a lot of times your first instinct is the best. I thought, this looks good right here, And I thought, well, it may look. a little better on up that next ridge. I see some big oaks up there. Sometimes you're better off just to back off and hunt that first spot, you know. It's not. I've done it both ways. I have put up in right there. Then the deer come, big buck come around up 100 yards up there, you know. Thought, gosh, I wish I had checked on up there, you know. But that's a very tricky thing. It's nice if you can just kind of walk the whole area and check it out, you know. And
It's pure instinct, honestly.
it is. It's a guess, really. I mean, it's
Sixth sense.
and just trying to guess the right situation.
Well, and I just bring it up because the thing that I love about whitetail hunting is you never have it completely figured out. Every situation is different. You never stop learning. Like, that's the thing I think we all love about whitetails.
Yeah.
But in like, have you ever had success pushing further forward, not finding what you're wanting, and moving back and setting up on the better spot and actually killing a deer? Or have you had in the same circumstance, walked a whole area out, found the best spot, either hunted that day or the following day or a couple days later and had success? Where like you're really trying to learn it. Because I always think about like ground scent and leaving a bunch of scent in other places. You know, have you had success doing either?
Yeah, I
of those?
have walked back and done that, and it has hurt me before because I don't like crossing an area with my feet on the ground, going that way, then coming back, and then putting a stand up. To me, I don't know how many deer I've had to come up. I don't care what kind of boots you got or whatever. Sometimes your pants will hit the weeds, or they can pick you up sometime, your smell. And I always like to go to a place and stop right there and then hunt this part right here. You know, I don't like to go up here and then walk back down here and around here and then put your stand up back below that. You know, I think you hurt yourself, and a lot of times those good deer, they don't have to walk right there on the ground and smell. They can tell sometime according to a lot of times if it's real dry here, something, I can kind of do that. I feel better about walking. If it's really dry, I don't think they smell. But if there's little moisture content on the leaves of the ground, I think they pick you up a lot easier. That's just the way I kind of feel about it.
Oh,
That makes it hard in the early season here because we have a lot of green in the woods early season. So if you're big on preseason scouting, you better do it in June or July. But I'm not big on that. I don't like preseason scouting.
that's something I was going to bring up is like the value of in-season scouting. The way I've been reading this conversation, it seems like you're real big in season scouting, like finding the freshest sign right then and there. It's not so much about, you know, what it looked like 2 months before or a month before. It's like you're trying to find it there and then hunt it then, not try to come back to it. Am I picking that up right?
Well, I've got like salt and stuff like that on stumps and stuff, try to get pictures of bucks early, like right now. But
Like we've had like salt stumps and stuff like that in the past and everything like that, and then we can put them in a lot of different states and everything like that.
yeah, where it's legal to do, you know, we put out minerals or whatever where you can do it. Or
Tennessee's about the only place that we have salt out now.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try to find a deer on the property at first, but it seemed like about September they go through a change. You know, you can find them now. But it's nice to know that you got a deer in that property, but that's not where we usually end up hunting them there. Always right at September is when like they go through that change. You know, they stay in that summer pattern so long. You got, like Jordan said, that first week you got a pretty good chance maybe to kill one off the edge of a field somewhere. You know, because the bucks are kind of still together. And but it's tough when they start changing. In September is when they start changing here, you know.
Now, since you've been a bow hunter for, I'm guessing, you said you're right about 70 years old. You've been bow hunting for probably almost 60 years, or shooting a bow at least that long?
Yeah, about 60 years.
You've hunted all over the place, okay? We talked about that a little bit earlier on, but you've hunted a bunch of different states, a bunch of different species of animals. When it comes to white-tailed deer and some of these other states you've gone to, what skill sets that you learned hunting in North Carolina transferred to some of these other states that you've gone to, especially in the Midwest, the other parts of the Southeast, and so on?
Well, I've noticed the deer in the Midwest especially don't look up don't seem to be quite as alert as our deer for some reason. The eastern deer, to me, I don't know, if you're not hidden in the tree really good, they're, especially those big does or something, they can pick you out and you got to get hidden good. But I've just noticed, especially the Midwest deer in the area, I don't know if it's because it's flat terrain or something or what it is, but it just seems like their faces look more calm and they don't do that as much. They will. I've been picked out there too, but it's kind of a different type of hunting. It seems like in the flat terrain than it is here.
Now, is there anything you do in some of those other states that you still do at home, like the skill sets from like the buck sign? Like, is there anything that you take from how you hunt here out there?
Well, out in some of those places, you got a lot more agriculture. You know, you may be next to a bean field, cornfield, whatever, and yeah, it's a lot different than our hunting out there. And out there, some kind of funnel with the trees funnel down, you know, and they're going to the beans in the evening and stuff. It's a lot different type of hunting there. But I still look for the buck sign, the scrapes, and things like that in the same way I do here. But it's a different type of hunting. I know that.
Probably a little bit easier walking.
Yeah, it's not used to that flat walking.
I'll tell you what, it's about hard. I believe sometimes it's harder to drag a deer out there than it is here. You ever killed a deer in Kansas or Oklahoma?
Oh, yeah.
Dragging on that sandy or that type of soil.
Oh, yeah.
It don't slide. The leaves don't slide, do they?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, my Kansas buck last year, that drag was hellacious.
Yeah.
Bad.
Now you see why we carry deer. Well, he don't anymore, but
I killed a Kansas deer last year, and I had to pull it across a plowed field, just that clay-like dirt, you know, kind of a little bit wet, and it was not moving. I was worn out before I got it to the truck.
yeah, I told him that we carry deer. Showed him some pictures of us carrying deer.
Yeah, I'm almost stopped doing that. Get about too old to do that.
The also, when we're talking about, again, you were talking about funnels just now, like out west and stuff. One thing I've been wanting to pick your brain, or both y'all's brains on, but Darrell, especially you, is what terrain funnels do you really like in the mountains? You mentioned saddles and stuff earlier, but what else have you seen that kind of funnels deer, especially from like a bow hunter standpoint? Because I always look at through the lens of a bow hunter, because gun hunting, you just extend that range.
Yeah.
But like from a bow hunting standpoint, what are some of these other funnels and edges and stuff that you really like in the mountains here?
In the mountains?
Mm-hmm.
Well, some places we do have fields. You know, you got some fields and you got some kind of rough terrain, you know, real rough briar thickets or cutovers or stuff like that. Around the edges and stuff, I don't know, the property, it's according to what property you're on here. It's just hard. And sometimes I've killed a lot of deer just coming down the edges of fields, you know, where it's real thick or something. That's a pretty tough question, how to funnel a deer in the mountain section.
Well, I was thinking more like terrain funnels, like the elevation change and everything like that, especially on some of that public land that y'all have hunted.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, when we came out here, everything's so big. And you look at it from a bow hunting standpoint, and it's like, man, there's trails all the way up down the side of this face. There's a bench here, but they're like skidder trail, logging road, these big secondary points, saddles. There's a lot of stuff out here that deer could travel along or around, but like, where can I find like the X? And that's the hard part.
He's still asking that same question.
Oh, for sure.
Like it's so big and so vast. You can't funnel a deer here. They don't funnel here the same way. It's like funnels are a little bit more flat.
You could almost take funnel out of the mountain section.
Yeah, it's not. There's no
tough. Yeah,
like creek drainage. I guess would be either a creek drainage or a road bed or something like that, or like a flat. But it's so vast.
Like down at Phillips, down there is one place we have to hunt. There's 5 logging roads that come together right there.
Oh gosh, it's killer.
I mean, it comes around the ridge this way, one off this way, and 2 like that. You know,
there'll always be a couple big.
That's a funnel right there, and the deer walk. They like walking that logging road. A logging road can be a pretty good funnel in the mountain. I used to hunt West Virginia some, and it was all trees, just all trees. I'm hunting Wyoming County in that bow area up there, And that was one of my biggest things in those mountains up there was to hunt those logging roads. Those scrapes be coming around those mountains and stuff. But that is a logging roads. And if I had to say my number one funnel would be coming off of a big mountain into a saddle or a swag would be my number one funnel in our mountain section, where the trails meet in that flat ridge coming around to one point. The most trails that you can find that connects, to me, would be a funnel in our mountain section, I think.
And that'll normally be like at the bottom part of the top third of the mountain, if you understand what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the bottom part of the top third of the mountain. So not the peak, maybe 100 to 150 yards off from the peak.
Exactly.
Like a good gunshot away in the woods, and then it's right there, and there's that saddle, and usually there's a bench or something. It don't have
We
to
call
be
them
far.
shelves sometimes.
Yeah, we call them shelves. Yeah, that's would be the best way to describe a funnel, but it still doesn't funnel them. That's the problem, is because there are 5 shelves in there. There are 15 to 20 like road beds or skidder trails, whatever you want to call them. There's creek drainages. There's everything. There's like 25 different ways. You could, honestly, fallen trees will funnel these deer, because something like Hurricane Helene that just hit last year, I mean, literally a couple weeks after y'all left, it's going to look a lot different next time y'all go up there. I promise you. It's going to look way different than what you're used to, because half of that mountain is gone. So, like, not the mountain, but the trees on it are gone. That's going to funnel him. So that's honestly a new something that he hasn't experienced, other than maybe Hugo that hit in '89 here. That just the trees are going to funnel the deer. That's about it.
I'll tell you a funnel. One time I was on a flat oak ridge, and I saw an old fence laying there. And there's one over here and one over here. So I stood that fence up about from here to this way, and I stood it up that way. Would you believe I killed a buck that come in between in the fence? Now that's a funnel.
That's
You gotta make your own funnel.
legitimate
I made my
funnel.
own funnel. It came right in between that fence and came down to me.
Well, the conversation about this funnels kind of goes back to like when we were talking about scrapes earlier. It's that focal point that deer's already interested in. Like, it's an area that it's got the bedding, food, cover, everything's kind of all in that area, and then that focal point could be that big scrape, which could be acting as a funnel, a focus area that those deer are going to try to come to. So I can see why you've had so much success hunting scrapes too, because again, it's just that focal point for them up there in the mountains.
Especially if you're bow hunting.
Yeah, that's why I'm just thinking through the lens of bow hunting, because like when I think of gun hunting, like I'd love to come up here and gun hunt, dude. Like,
fun.
It'd be or muzzledeer hunt.
Yeah.
I would love that. The bow hunt, like I killed that deer last year. I was up here. Thought I was shooting a doe. Camera guy thought I shot a doe. It was a velvet spike when we walked up to it.
Nice.
And I was like, what am I doing? But I was just happy to kill a deer.
Yeah.
And that was a heck
Go
of
to
a
buck tag. That's pretty good. That's more than what most people could say.
I told Angel, I was like, I forgot. I was like, man, I killed 2 bucks last year because I forgot about that deer.
Yeah.
But it's just, dude, I just look at the lens of like, there's so many listeners and viewers of this podcast that hunt, this area of the country from Alabama up to Pennsylvania, up the Appalachian Mountains, throw an Appalachia. Can I remember that?
Yeah, there you go.
Appalachian Mountains.
Pretty good.
But like,
He said it right earlier.
I know he does. He gets it right all the time.
I was proud of him.
I do my homework.
But like that, there's so many guys that listen to this podcast that hunt that stretch, and if you're going to be a gun hunter, like you get opportunity there. But if you really want to stretch your season out, you got to bow hunt, and that's why I always kind of look at from a question standpoint is like how can we get better as bow hunters hunting that kind of terrain and habitat, because it's rough, it's hard. You don't have the open ground to see deer from a long ways away. A lot of times it's pretty brushy and thick in spots, especially with mountain laurel or rhododendron.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things kind of going against you, plus the elevation. Because, I mean, talking about some of these areas that, we hunted last year, and I know that y'all have hunted that public, that top 1/3, the bottom of the top 1/3, God,
It's a mile to get.
I can't imagine getting
Uphill
up
the
there.
whole way.
Because like the spot we stopped at half a mile would take us forever to get there, because you're eating one of the steepest slopes I've ever had to climb. Seriously.
The problem, the thing is, and I know Dad can attest to this, you got to be there when they want to be in there. You have to, because a lot of times in those big, huge, steep mountains, sure, you'll have your big buck occasionally up there that's that early. But it's if you're talking early season, they're going to be low. They're not going to spend that much time up there because there's really no food. You can get down there low. There's a lot more green down low, and that's what they're focusing on. And the browse is a lot more tender that time of year. And then, but also at that same time, you've got apple trees. They aren't that high if they're going to eat that. You've got to know when to go in there. And a lot of times when we're going to those like peaks of those mountains, those big top, or like late October, mid to late October, September, early September, we're focusing maybe halfway up that mountain or maybe not even on that mountain at all. So you just got to be smart, because these deer don't have to travel far to find food. They don't have to travel far to find bedding. Because there's so many different types of terrain features in one mountain. There's so many different type of food features in one mountain. It's tough. It's very, very hard.
Yeah, that's Jacob's great dilemma. Is like he wants to come rifle hunt it, but you got to climb, you got to eat that hill. You rifle hunt it,
but here's the thing: is about a rifle is you can go to that halfway point and shoot to the top. Mm-hmm. But the problem is you've scared him getting to that halfway point. So it's about when you go in there, and I'm big on that is when.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we covered that a lot in our episode we did with you last year, which we'll link, by the way.
Not just when, but man, he might be able to hear me coming from 400 yards away because of my breathing.
yeah.
I mean,
that's big.
It's like Darth Vader walking up the ridge. I mean, yeah.
Alabama hills are not that big, are they?
Say what?
The Alabama hills are not that big.
No.
Negative.
No.
Steepness.
Hey, when we came back, we hunted our quote unquote mountains back home. I'm like, dude, this is a cakewalk. I love. There was a scouting trip last year. We went. And we walked up one of the steeper faces on this one little section we like to hunt. And we kept talking like, this still isn't as bad as North Carolina. It's still not as bad. Close. Like, I was like, oh, man, that like gave me a newfound perspective of appreciation of everything else that we thought was rough.
Mm-hmm.
Nah.
Yeah.
Is Colorado as bad as here? Or worse?
It's worse in places. But the steepness, Colorado elevation is a lot higher, the elevation. But the steepness here is about the same as Colorado. You know what I'm saying? But like we're only like 3,000 to 4,000 feet.
You're about 40. You're at the peak of where I killed that bird on the last day. Right there is 4,500 feet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're not even starting
not
that
real
low.
high, but we got a lot of this. Our slopes.
Yeah, the slopes are steep.
Yeah.
It's like big elevation gain over not that much of a distance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we said, we hunted northwest Wyoming before and big mountains, but man, it was nothing like over here. It's just that lack of oxygen, that thinner air, really sucking wind.
Yeah.
It's like you go 100 yards, I'm like, man, this is rough.
Can't breathe.
Yeah.
I've hunted a lot of 12,000 feet elevation, 12 and 13,000 in Colorado. I've done a lot of mule deer and elk hunting in that area. That's where it gets to your lungs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite deer hunt you've been on? Like favorite bucks that you've killed over the years?
Probably Nebraska. I'm going to say I had an older guy that loved to quail hunt and pheasant hunt. He took me to his house one day and said, come over here, I want to show you a place to deer hunt. He said, public land too. And he set me down and showed me on a map. So I went to Nebraska, and it was public land. And that's the most bucks I think I'd ever seen, and saw the rut, and that's where I killed my largest whitetail, and that was on my first trip. I killed 2 bucks. You could kill 2 bucks then, and I killed 2 bucks in Nebraska. And
tell them a story about you killing that big one.
Okay.
That's what I want to know.
That's when Papa was with you.
Yeah, my dad was with me, and I set him on a edge of a field, on his little cornfield down there, and he went up in the woods, and we got him set up and everything. And so I took off and went way up the edge of this cornfield, and I went in the edge of the trees. It's kind of off a big swampy area off of a lake. But there was some hardwoods up around the edge, and I saw some really big rubs, and I said, man, that's some big rubs. And it snowed a little bit the night before. Well, I found 2 scrapes where they had dug the snow out. And I said, that's fresh. I said, you can't find anything any fresher than that. And anyway, I put my stand up. So that evening, I heard something coming, and it was a doe doe and a little one. They came out in front of me. They stopped about 25 yards, and I heard a grunt to my left. I said, "Uh-oh, there's a buck." I heard it hitting its antlers on some trees there, and the doe was looking back. Well, she got over to my right, and she got a little scent of me, just a little bit of a. She stomped one time, and all of a sudden that buck popped out about 35, 40 yards, and I saw the size of its body is what shocked me. But he came out and then he walked in the opening. He was about 35 yards, and that doe started to stomp. I said, "Oh no!" I said, "He's gonna run." So there was one limb right across his lungs, and I just thought, I'm shooting. So I pulled my 30-yard pin. I put my 30-yard pin on that limb, and I shot him right in the heart, and he ran right toward me and then ran back this way and fell close to my stand there. And but anyway, that's the one I killed in the 180s. He was.
What he didn't tell you was what happened afterwards. He was wearing his fanny pack, and he couldn't find out. He couldn't remember which side his bow rope was on. So he probably he keeps the bow rope in the fanny pack.
I was torn up. I'll tell you the truth. I said, wait a minute, how'd I get out of the tree? How'd I let my bow down? I was shaking. You know, it's about 20 degrees. It was cold.
You were excited.
A little windy, and I guess that was the most exciting moment I've ever had on a deer. When I thought I've shot a Boone and Crockett deer. You know, he's nice. I thought he scored 200, and I thought he was about 500 pounds.
He was 185 and 3/8, or 185 and 2/8, had 18 scoreable points.
His body was just, I'd never shot a deer like that. His body was so big. Yeah, but anyway, that's probably my most exciting hunting trip right there.
Did your dad get one?
Yeah, he actually got got an 8-pointer with a bow. It was broke off, but he got one anyway. So we had a great trip. I got another buck, and I got 2 bucks and he got 1, so we just had a fantastic trip.
It's pretty cool. I remember what was going up. My brother was playing. It was 2001. My brother was playing football. I'll never forget the phone call. His dad would call. We had the Nokia brick phones back then, you know. And I was walking up, and Mom said, "It's your dad. He wants to talk to you." And me, I didn't care. Dad could have stayed honestly in the Midwest the whole deer season, and I didn't care because I wanted to see him kill a big deer, you know, and how many of them can he kill? And I remember him calling and saying, "Jordan, I killed a pretty big deer." I was like, "Did you?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll have to show it to you," because there was no way we couldn't send pictures or anything back then, so I had to wait like another week or something like that. And he got home, and that was the biggest deer I'd ever seen at the point, and I was 13 years old. No, I wasn't. Mm-hmm. I was 10. 10 years old. I remember that.
11, something like that.
2001, November the 9th, 2001 is when you killed it.
Giant.
That was a dream come true on a buck.
We'll cut pictures of that deer in.
I want to try to beat it this year.
Hey, going to Kansas, that's the place to do it.
That's my goal.
Well, you haven't. Have you seen a deer that big? Since you killed that deer?
I've seen a few, not many.
Since you killed that deer?
No.
The West Virginia deer, I know, was pretty close.
Yeah.
I saw a deer in West Virginia that was close to that and almost shot it.
Seen a few like on private land.
Makes me want to ask you, what's the story of the biggest buck that you ever had get away from you?
The West Virginia deer.
I think I just told you that one. Let's see. Oh, no, wait a minute. I'd say the biggest. This was really weird. We could ride 4-wheelers into some coal mining land in West Virginia. So this guy, we rode a 4-wheeler up into this coal mining land on the Bow counties, and we saw a giant buck standing there. Well, anyway, I went in there, back in those trees, kind of where I saw it, and started looking up, and I set up on a flat ridge in there with a bunch of scrapes. And anyway, the next morning, I saw that buck coming right at me with a bow. He was walking right at me, and I figured, I was guessing 180 or so. You know, he was just a giant. He's coming straight at me, and this is the weirdest thing in the world. It was real foggy. But down here I could see him. He started walking up, and he walked into that fog probably in bow distance, and I couldn't see him good enough to shoot him. The sun was shining directly at me about 8:30 in the morning. With that sun straight at me, I couldn't see him real plain. But I could hear him working the scrape. I could hear him going shh, shh.
25 yards.
But anyway, that was the weirdest. You'd never believe that unless you saw that situation. But he was about 50 yards down here. Then he started coming up. Did everything right, and the fog messed me up. That I never will forget that. But that's maybe the largest buck I've ever let get away. I could actually shot him at one time as he was coming up. But I knew he was going to get a little close. But anyway, that's about the biggest one that got away.
Oh, what about you, Jordan? You got a good one?
The biggest, the one I got lost on in Ohio.
Yeah, exactly.
I got lost in Ohio, and an easy place to get lost. But when you're, how was I, 17? Yeah, 17 years old, and it was opening weekend of deer season in Ohio, and we went to this public piece, and like Dad said, I remember this. I remember I had flip phones and everything. Dad said, meet right here in 30 minutes. Just go down off in the woods and check. And we'd walked in on this green field. There was some corn planted in some parts of that. So I kind of like drop off down maybe 100, 150 yards in the woods. And I seen a big track, and it kind of misty raining at that point. I noticed a big track was kind of going down in. I was like, well, I'll follow the track, see where he's going. Well, wind was kind of blowing, 10 to 15 miles an hour. And I get about 30 yards. I see this big pile of crap. And I said, well, I know that they say everybody thinks a big pile of crap means that it's a buck. That does not mean it's a buck. It means that's where they're bedding close. And I've debunked that a lot. But I saw that and I went, there's deer right here somewhere. And I looked right down the hill and I could see the butt of a deer about 25 yards. And I'm like in the thick of some stuff. And I said, well, it's got to be a buck. So I knocked an arrow. And I was shooting a Matthews. I think I was shooting adrenaline. Yeah, I was shooting your adrenaline. Yeah, I had a Matthews adrenaline back then. And first year I ever tried to shoot I had 3-blade rages on. So I see this deer and I get behind a tree. Well, the wind was kind of hitting me in the back of the neck. I was like, well, I'm going to get to see what it is here in a second. It stands up. It's not the biggest deer I've ever seen on the hoof, but it is close to it. And he's bigger than my Iowa deer, which was, if I had to guess, mid 180s to 190, if I had to guess. And he's 25 yards. But there's just vines hanging everywhere, and he turns and just looks right at me. And I'm trying to find a hole. I was going to shoot this deer in the face if I could. I didn't care. I was 17 years old. I was going to fling it there and shoot it somehow. So it just kind of turns and kind of walks off the hill, just kind of leaves. And I went, I'm going after this deer. It's perfect conditions. The wind is blowing. It's rainy, and I'm leaving. I'll keep going. I go about 500, 600 yards in the woods, and I peep over the ridge, and there he's standing again. And he's 25 yards at this point, facing away from me. I drop down, knock an arrow, and when I peep up, he's running. So obviously he either saw me go down or whatever. And all I remember is whenever he stood up, he stood there for 30 seconds, so I got to see him really good. He had 5 on top on the right side, 4 on top of the left side, a drop tine, split brows, and the kickers. That's all I remember. He was huge. So after that point, I was like, well, I'm still going. I almost killed him that time. At 17 years old, you have young man's confidence. I seen him twice. I know I can see him a third time. Well, I did. Saw him a third time, and by the time I saw him, he's probably 150 yards in like this. There's like an overgrown field right there. By the time I saw him, those other deer running, I scared him. I was like, well, I need to figure out where I'm going. Well, I didn't know where I was. When I turned around, I was like, where in the heck am I? And at this point, I left my flip phone in the truck. Dad left it because it was raining, I looked down and I was supposed to meet Dad an hour ago at this point. And I'm trying my best to find my way back. It took me 2.5 hours to figure out. And I started yelling. I was so scared to death. I started yelling and Dad finally heard me. And when I heard him. I ran as fast as I could. Now I can't run fast. I run slow turtle, you know, on the. I'm very, very slow. But it took me 30 minutes running to get to him. So I'd probably win 1.5 miles after this deer. But I had the opportunity to shoot that deer at one point. That one. That was the biggest deer I ever let get away. And then the biggest one, I guess, the one I let go, the big 8-pointer I let go last year was the dumbest thing I ever done. Just got him 14 yards. I was hunting a bigger deer than him. So, and he was mid 150s. Yeah, that's stupid. Very, very stupid. But yeah, I got lost on that.
He was scared to death.
Whenever I saw my dad, I passed out. Like I just hit the ground.
He was sweating, and it was cold. He was sweating and breathing hard. He was scared.
I think we stopped in there at 1:30. It was 4:15 whenever I got to Dad. So and I was supposed to meet him at 2.
I didn't know where he was.
Yeah.
Dang.
I thought he was hurt. I started searching for him everywhere.
I was about to say, did it scare you?
Yeah, scared me. I thought he was hurt or something. I finally heard his voice faintly in the distance.
Yeah.
And I went toward him.
I was 1.5 miles from him, roughly.
Long ways. He went the wrong way.
The problem was when I walked back, I'd walked back to that point, but I walked back about 150 to 200 yards below where I'd originally saw that deer. So, and it didn't look familiar. So I turned around and I walked all the way back to that little overgrown field where I knew where I was. And I thought, if I walk 2 miles that way, I'll hit the main road. But I didn't want to walk that way because I knew I was going to walk 2 miles that way and then 1.5 miles back to the truck. Didn't want to do that. I wanted to find my dad. So, yeah.
He made it out.
Yeah, I'm here now. So
He's here now.
It all worked out.
yeah. But I guess that would be the biggest one.
The question is, when he told you the story about that buck, did you believe him?
I said, well, was it that big, really?
Yeah, it was. It was that.
Yeah,
big.
he said it was that big. But it was possible up there in Ohio. There's some big bucks right in that area.
For me to be gone for that long and to disobey my dad's orders, it was big. Because that's one thing that I never did. His dad said be here in 20 minutes. I was there in 15, you know. But for that deer, it was worth it for me because I saw it twice in 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, I'm going to keep on going. And it took me an hour to find him again. So, yeah. Being lost is not fun. It's not fun at all.
Man, that's crazy.
Days before Onyx.
Yeah.
Man.
Onyx makes it
Before
easy.
smartphones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's true.
I like those on X's.
Darrell, I had one more question for you as a point of wrapping up. With 60-ish years of hunting experience, you've killed around 500 deer, what we talked about earlier. If you could just give people one piece of hunting advice, what would your number one piece of advice be?
Just keep going at it as hard as you can. Hunt hard and don't give up because it can always turn around. That's one, just keep trucking and try to stay in good health and good shape. Because hunting will keep you in good shape. So I would just don't ever give up would be one thing. I just keep going because the outdoors is the best thing in the world to me. It's been a great life for me and all the memories I got. So it's just great. Spend as much time outdoors as you can. That's my advice.
Love it.
Perfect. Awesome. Jordan, you got any piece of advice too? Just kind of wrap us up.
Don't eat yellow snow, I guess, No, I mean, yeah, kind of like what Dad says. I mean, you're going to get down. I don't know how many times that I've called my dad, just really upset. Like, I don't know what to do. I haven't been on a deer. You've killed 4 bucks because between here and Kansas, and I haven't even seen a buck, and it's just literally it all can change in the blink of an eye. And we all get down and out. I mean, everybody gets down and out. I mean, you second guess yourself, and then all of a sudden, boom, you shoot one, and then 2 days later, you could have killed another one, and 3 days later, you could have killed another one. You take somebody, you could have killed a deer. It's don't forget to take a kid hunting. Don't forget to make sure that your buddies are. You can honestly don't be a lone wolf as much as you think you should be, because deer hunting's fun whenever you have a lot of people around you that can support you. Ask for help if you need help, because a lot of people don't. They want to try to do it themselves, and then they get too frustrated and they stop hunting. and they don't have fun with it. But yeah.
And no matter how old you are, you can always learn from somebody else. So always listen to what somebody has to say, because you can always learn. Even at my age, people teach me stuff. Jordan teaches me stuff now. So
He don't listen, but he teaches. I try to.
I try to act like I don't listen, but but anyway, you can always learn from someone else. You get tips from a lot of other hunters. Make you a better hunter listening to other people. So that's a good advice I could give.
That's what this podcast is for. So we got a wide demographic of people listen, all different ages and backgrounds. So,
Yep.
there's a lot of great information come out of it. But gentlemen, appreciate y'all joining us for this podcast. And Jordan, thank you for setting this up.
Absolutely.
Thank you for letting us come over
Thank
here and
you,
do
I
this.
can't believe he did it. I cannot believe he did it.
Been 8 years in the making.
Yeah,
Made it happen.
absolutely.
Nothing against that. I'm just a little shy.
No, but yeah, you're great. I mean, when we get a guy on like you that has as much bow hunting experience over a length of time, like again, almost 6 decades or so, and you've killed as many deer as you have, I mean, I'm just mesmerized by just all these racks down here. Again, all the smaller bucks, which most of these deer are bigger than any buck I've killed. So it's amazing to kind of see that, that experience over the decades. And again, you can't teach woodsmanship. You can't teach woodsmanship. You can't teach experience. Something self-taught. You got to learn on your own. And I think you're a great example of what could be done if you put enough time and effort and learn from your mistakes and always ask why and kind of keep on moving forward. So
Well, I appreciate that.
absolutely.
What you said. Appreciate it a lot.
Well, for all the viewers and listeners out there, thank all for watching. Thank all for listening. We'll catch you back here on the next episode from the Southern Outdoorsman podcast. And remember, guys, y'all stay Southern.